Hey, how's it going, guys? Domino Paris 21 here, and I'm back again with special guest Daniel from I Am Vanguard. Say what's up.
Hi guys.
He seems very excited to be here. But yeah, but we're here to bring you guys another episode of Meta Talk, where basically with the release of every new set, we kind of give our personal analysis and ratings based on different categories that I bring my own personal criteria to for certain decks and such. And Daniel here has been playing Eradicators, of course, as you see here, that we are going to be reviewing. Ever since they got first released in Japanese meta. So now finally that it's been released for us English players here. But we're here just to kind of give our own personal input and our experiences with the deck. So the three categories, of course, for those of you who haven't seen my previous episode with Aquaforce, I like to rate decks on how competitive they are based on three categories. You have 1, pressure, how well they can pressure your opponent. 2, advantage, how well they can produce advantage for themselves. And 3, which I think is one of the most important ones, is consistency. How consistent is the deck at fulfilling its strategy? So Eradicators, of course, is the deck that we are going to be analyzing. So without further ado, let's actually get straight to it now. So the first category we're going to be talking about is pressure. How well does this deck pressure your opponent? Well, Daniel, tell me, how well do you think Eradicators can pressure?
Is that supposed to be a question?
Yeah.
It pretty much stays in the name. You're right. Eradicator.
Well, in terms of pressuring your opponent, I mean, there are 2 bosses that pretty much does the whole job by themselves, which is Gauntlet Buster during the early or mid game, just like getting those crits and retiring your opponent's things. Like, I mean, that in itself, like, it just creates so much pressure for your opponent. Especially if your opponent's hand is awkward, then the fact that he just gains a crit on top of that, it just makes up for that lost damage as Domino Paris 21 once told me. Yeah,
but essentially the true pressure that of course comes from the deck is mainly from Dragonic Descendant and Gauntlet Buster Dragon. These are the 2 best boss cards that they have. Now, of course, you do have the option of Sweep Command and Armor Break, I guess. But in terms of actually really good effective pressure, Descendant is definitely, arguably in my opinion right now, the most pressuring card in the game, and you have Gauntlet Buster as well that does that. Just as Daniel mentioned, Gauntlet Buster, just to be able to pressure your opponent into trying to fixating their field and being able to control their field, causing them to lose rear guards while them having to deal with the crits that he gains and the extra power is definitely very pressuring and very annoying to deal with. And then Descendant, of course, I mean,
it just bullies your opponent to death at the end.
Yeah, the minute your opponent's at 4, that's really where the bullying happens with Descendant. Now, it doesn't really stop there with their bosses, because of course, you know, although the bosses are very strong, they still need to be equipped with some really good support. Now, really, it starts off with their starter Linchu. Now, if you guys seen my top 5 starter video, starting Vanguards, I'm not going to tell you where Linchu was, but I pretty much what I explained with Linchu is it can immediately put pressure on your opponent from the get-go. Because if your opponent does not have a good starter, you can just save it to try and kill one of the grade 1s. So your opponent really has to, you know, think carefully about, you know, pretty much which card they want to feed to the Linchu. So
feed to Linchu.
Exactly.
It really gets them thinking whether they should commit to the field or not. It just makes them make bad decisions overall too.
So essentially, it really does force your opponent to play around the skills. I mean, you do have Chohos, which can kill front row units. Linchu can kill grade 1s or lower. Gauntlet Busters can is really effective, especially early to mid game when your opponent has a really small field. So it not only brings pressure to your opponent by simply just trying to end the game, but also puts pressure on your opponent on, you know, how to pretty much play the game overall in terms of assembling their field and such, or what cards to play. So it's definitely, Eradicators can definitely force your opponent to essentially just work around their abilities. So they're going to be playing on your terms. So I think a deck that can really manipulate their opponent to play on your terms like that definitely deserves a 5 out of 5 for me. So when it comes to pressure, I give Eradicators a 5 out of 5. What about you, Daniel?
Well, you mentioned the 3 categories. Of course, I do rate Eradicators 5 out of 5 in terms of their competitiveness. But of course, I do I did kind of see some kind of consistency issues sometimes for people who didn't run any the Ceremonial Bonfire Eradicator Castor, which can fix your hand in a clutch. So definitely, if you want to up the consistency of the Eradicator deck, then you should definitely consider running those cards to just get the cards you need and get those Gauntlet Busters or Drawing Descendants. So
how would you rate their pressure overall, though?
Pressure overall, I mean, it's 5 out of 5 for me. I mean, like there's
really no question about that.
There's no question about it. I mean, not just their bosses, but yeah, as you mentioned, the other cards too. It's like just what they do overall, like.
You must play on my terms. That's pretty much what Eradicators say. Now moving on to the next category, which is advantage. Now, like I say in previous videos too, advantage can definitely work hand in hand with pressure, because if you're able to effectively pressure your opponent, you kind of build advantage there by typically forcing more cards out of their hand than normally you would. But I mean, there's different opinions on that. In terms of advantage itself, there's really Eradicators itself don't produce advantage for themselves. No types of ideal draw power and such. And a lot of the retiring skills, such as the Choho, it's a lot of 1-for-1. Choho or Sweet Command and such. But a lot of their abilities is a lot of 1-for-1, and most of the time, especially when I play this deck, I am committing to the field a lot. Because it's a very aggressive deck. Really, the cards that can definitely create some pluses, I guess, for you is Gauntlet Buster Dragon. If you're able to effectively use a skill multiple times, maybe even combining a Choho on top of a Sweet Command, and your opponent has a full front row. So they definitely have a few plus plays they have, but really the advantage depends on how effective the deck is running for you and how well you can pressure your opponent, because that's really how they speak advantage. But in terms of producing advantage for themselves, producing any type of draw power and such, the deck kind of lacks that for itself. So it's really tough to build like a huge hand with this deck sometimes. But I don't know, Daniel, what's your second opinion on that?
I mean, even if it doesn't make that much of a pluses, like you said, I mean, it's still a break even in your favor. You're retiring what you want and getting rid of the things that you don't want with Choho. So I mean, even if you're kind of losing your card support at 1-for-1, then you're still creating kind of a pseudo advantage by getting rid of the things that your opponents kind of want to have on their field or have to fix their field because they lost it. So.
Yeah, because I mean, Descendant, although he's very powerful, he is a minus for yourself when you use the skill, so you definitely have to be careful when using it. So then that's why Descendant is really designed to be that finisher of the deck. Not as ideal as that stable Vanguard is like Gauntlet Buster. But now, when it comes to advantage overall, like I say, if the deck's running the way it's supposed to be and everything's running smoothly, you're going to produce advantage in terms of minusing your opponent. But in terms of creating advantage for yourself, create extra cards for yourself, the deck doesn't really do as much unless you're playing like Sweet Command Dragon. So overall, I'm actually going to give the deck a 3.5 out of 5. So, because I'm looking more at advantage that it produces for itself, not really as much as how much it minuses your opponent. What kind of rating would you probably give, Daniel?
For
advantage.
For advantage, I mean, I honestly would give it a little bit of a lower rating at 2.5 or 3 because it doesn't really plus you. It's not really an advantage, but it is minusing your opponent. So that's why I give it a little bit lower rating.
Yeah, and I think that I can agree with that. All right, now moving on to the last one, which I think it's depending how well the deck favors in this category really can depend on how well it does in competitive play, and that is consistency.
Yeah, I kind of jumped ahead there.
yeah, he jumped ahead there. I mean, I don't know, he likes consistency. Now, in terms of consistency, how consistent is this deck? Well, if you look at the main strategy Eradicators, this is about abusing your main Vanguards to either put pressure on your opponent, to control the field, and there's different things that they do. I mean, what's nice with Eradicators is that they have a lot of great options with their bosses. I mean, they do have a pretty okay break ride. That is synergistic with them, but you don't even have to play that. So there's different options to go about. Now, one thing I really love with my current build, the Gauntlet Buster Descendant build, is that one, I don't have to rely on a certain grade 3 to ride. I can ride just about anything, and I feel like the deck's running smoothly. As long as I get a grade 1, 2, and 3, I feel like the deck's gonna run no matter what. So that's really good, and like I always say, a deck that's very simple in terms of enabling your skills, but yet very effective, it's just that's really what creates a very good competitive deck. Because you see a lot of these with a lot of the cards, a lot of the skills Eradicators, a lot of times they can either produce it themselves, or it's just very simple. Choho, put a card in Soul, you can retire a unit, it can enable your boss Vanguards or help support them, and Gauntlet Buster can even enable himself. So I mean, the strategy on playing this deck is very simple to enable, and as long as you have a grade 1, 2, and 3, the deck usually just runs very smoothly for you. So, Daniel, your experience, how do you feel about the deck?
What I really like about Eradicators, like especially the build that like Domino Paris 21 and other people have been using, is that each card has its purpose. Like not one card is dead when you play it. Like as he said, like whatever you play, it has a purpose and it will fulfill its like goal of what it's trying to do at that moment. And it just synergizes together so well with it. So that's what just makes the deck going, and then just finishes off your opponent like that.
Yeah, because you don't really necessarily have to rely on this card here, plan A here, of card A, card B here.
Exactly. Like there's so many different routes that you can go about when you're playing this deck. Like whether you like just have to run to Gauntlet Buster or drawing to send it. Like there's just a lot of ways to just make your plays and just take the win.
Because even then, the bosses can enable their own skills. Like Gauntlet Buster can Counter Blast 2 to retire something, to give him the crit. Descendant, I mean, all you have to do is attack and have 3 Eradicators. Yeah. It's pretty simple. And Sweet Command, I mean, he can retire, when you ride him, he can retire something himself. So to enable his skills. So it's very simple and very easy to enable to just use your bosses. So they don't really necessarily have to rely on certain cards. So overall, when it comes to consistency, I'm going to definitely give this deck a 5 out of 5.
Same for me as well, 5 out of 5. That's just how good it is. I mean, as I said, every card has a purpose, and they can all work with each other well. And whatever you run into, you can just work your way out of it. Yeah,
the deck overall is just very synergistic, and just but also at the same time, they don't really rely on any pieces or anything like that. So very simple, very effective. So yeah, overall, guys, Eradicators overall, especially with the set 10 meta, and even looking on moving forward to future sets. Definitely going to be a very big force for some time now in the competitive scene. I mean, we've already seen this in Japanese meta, so I mean, I expect no less in English.
There's a reason why it was dominating for such a long time in Japan.
And this guy got banned for a little bit. Oh, it got limited.
It still is. It still is.
Yeah, well, other than that, guys, thank you guys again so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to I Am Vanguard, as Daniel is representing. David's here. He's just on the computer right now. But don't forget to subscribe to them. Subscribe to my channel if you had it. Leave a thumbs up on this video. It's always appreciated. And definitely feel free to leave a comment down below. Share with us your personal experiences for any Eradicator players out there, and what you guys think overall.